So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kelly Mack, partner at Workbench. We're a seed stage enterprise fund based in New York City. Happy to be your today's moderator for today's event and wanted to welcome you to Viso Trust monthly webinar. And so today's topic is going to be how AI can accelerate business growth and reduce third-party risk. And I'm joined by Mark Sutton of Bain Capital and Paul Valente of Viso Trust. And before I hand it off to my panel to introduce themselves, I wanted to go over a few quick housekeeping items. First, we are taking questions at the end. We have 10 minutes for questions, so please submit them via chat or Q&A box. And then second, don't be shy. Please engage in the chat, introduce yourself and where you're tuning in from. We have Aileen from Fairfield County in the room. And then also share your perspective on what the panel is talking about and tell us your journey with AI so far. Then lastly, I know we got a lot of questions around this, but the webinar will be recorded and sent to everybody afterwards. And so with that, let's get started. I'll hand it over to Mark Sutton to introduce himself and share more about his background, and then we'll pass it over to Paul.
Thanks, Kelly, and thanks everyone for joining. Pleasure to be here and speak on this topic. So my name is Mark Sutton, and I am the CISO here at Bain Capital. I've been at Bain for 8.5 years. It doesn't seem that long, but I guess time moves quickly when you're having fun. I am responsible for all cybersecurity initiatives at Bain Capital. Just to give you a sense of Bain, we are an alternative asset management firm, about 175 billion in assets under management. We've got 29 offices globally, headquartered in Boston, London, and Hong Kong, with about 1,600 employees. Right, Paul, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Super delighted to be here. Thank you, Kelly, for leading the panel for us today. So Paul Valente, CEO and co-founder of Viso Trust. Prior to founding Viso Trust, I was a career security professional, and I've been the chief information security officer at several companies. I spent a lot of time in financial services and a lot of time in technology. And I spent decades on both sides of third-party cyber risk management. Today, as CEO and co-founder of Viso Trust, I'm dedicated to enabling companies to transform their TPRM and digital trust through generative AI. So delighted to be here and really looking forward to participating on the panel today.
I think we're going to have an amazing discussion. AI is top of mind for a lot of executives, founders, operators, everybody lately. So should be a great conversation. So with that, let's start off with, all right, AI. That's the topic of the conversation, but we'll just love to understand. I guess we can start with Mark. Just how and when did you start using AI, and what was the catalyst within your organization?
Well, I think first of all, I started using AI on a personal basis, and I think it all started with a little bit of intrigue, right? You start, all of the Twitter channels and all of the different various social media sites and people that I follow, the influencers that are out there started, blowing up and talking about this thing. So it's like, okay, what is this? I've got to jump on board and like any other kind of technologist out there, you're trying to play with it and get your hands dirty. So I think that's really where I started. It was more around intrigue and trial and error and what is it, and can you break it? Does it work? What's the upside? What's the downside? And just for a bit of fun. I think as that's progressed for me, it's really moved into more of a productivity tool for me personally. Really focused, I think, on idea generation. It's helpful, and as I said, really kind of being productive. And it comes in fits and starts, right? There'll be things where I'm like, oh wow, just with the work that I'm doing, I'm jumping in and using it a lot more frequently than I previously. I think from a switching gears to the business context, how we started and how we got involved. I think there was a number of different tailwinds that were trending. First of all, we've got a very forward-leaning investment community, right? So we've got Bain Capital Ventures, we've got Bain Capital Tech Opportunities, and those guys are pushing the envelope on all emerging and evolving technology. So, as a CISO of an organization that has to secure the environment, right, but still give them a playground with which they can play in, we've got to be on that front foot with them. So when it came to the business context, it was certainly more around, okay, how do we think about using this in our environment? How do we support the business and help them to be able to use it in a secure way? So that's really kind of my initial journey into AI.
Right, Paul, you started Viso in 2020, and yet, how'd you come up with the idea? How'd you start with the idea around leveraging AI for third-party risk monitoring?
Yeah, so similar to Mark, I started dabbling with AI and learning about AI and researching much earlier than the Visa story. Particularly, as a security professional, you need to understand really every technology that your constituents are using. You need to understand the risks and how you can secure that, right? Where I was first, where my company was interested in it was at Lending Club. We were working with large data sets. We were working on automated credit decisioning, and there was concerns about bias. There was concerns about lots of different areas. And so that's where I had to start, digging in and learning. And that's also where I started to get an interest for myself and for the company with regard to third-party cyber risk management. Particularly at Lending Club, we had a significant challenge where we needed to bring on third parties very, very quickly. And we were also highly concerned about risk, right? We were highly regulated. We were driving towards IPO, going to be a public company, working with some of the largest financial institutions in the world as banking partners. And so we needed to avoid a breach, right? So we were concerned about risk while also needed to bring on vendors quickly. And so that's where my co-founder and I started to look at alternative ways to run this process, and AI was, clearly going to be the way to do it. And so the Visa Trust patents were actually filed as early as 2017, and we have been hard at work doing what we do, way before it was cool, I would say, right? So that's really what got us into it. What really needing a better way to address third-party cyber risk management and trust at scale.
Got it. Well, transitions really nicely into the next question, which are, what are the key benefits that you have experienced by building an AI strategy within your business? I guess in particular for Visa or even at Lending Club, when you started using AI, what were the key measurable benefits that you were seeing?
Yeah. So I really learned, the potential and really how to approach it from a business when I was at ASAP, which is the next place where I was after a Lending Club. So at ASAP, what was really a key, win for Russ and I, we both worked there, is we got to work shoulder to shoulder with some of the best AI researchers in the world. And the way that they were approaching data, the way they were approaching the problem, the fact that you can cut down a large language problem space to a specific area of interest and solve real world problems was a huge eye opener for us there. And that allowed us to understand that there was real potential, and that's really what drove us to, to go as kind of a missing piece to go full time in 2020, as you mentioned. And what we've been able to achieve, I believe, is really amazing. What generative AI has allowed us to do is, on the TPRM side, we're able to eliminate 96% of the operational effort. To kind of put this in perspective, for years we've all been using questionnaires to ascertain, really the security posture of vendors, right? We know that comes with a ton of work, right? And it also comes with other downsides, right? The quality of information can be highly biased, right? Some companies won't answer, so we get gaps in visibility. On the trust side, folks are miserable with questionnaires too, right? On the trust side, they have to triage them, right? They have to figure out how they're going to have less expert employees fill them out, right? And there's various capacity issues and bottlenecks really on both sides, right? Which undermine the entire process for everyone. And with Visa Trust today, we can take any repository of information. What is that repository? It could be things like SOC reports, policies, any trust reports, or any artifacts of your security program. 5 minutes to upload those. You can then ask using plain language as if you're talking to any human being, any security question, and get an accurate answer back. In fact, way more accurate than you would typically get from a human being, with along with references and assurance levels. Very, very powerful. So these sorts of rates, we capture consistently across our customer base more than 5 times the issues with third parties that you would find with questionnaires. So more accuracy, more value, right? And then, as I mentioned before, the operational efficiency. So really, tremendous numbers, really, that we're seeing in terms of what you're able to do with AI versus prior methods.
Yeah, and Paul, if I could just add to that, because we've been a Viso customer now for 2.5 years, I think, or going on 3 years certainly. And I think the approach that you've taken here with how you're using AI to not just create a different mousetrap, right? And I think there's been other third-party companies out there who've tried to say, okay, well, let's just make a different questionnaire, right? Let's instead of 1,000 questions, we'll do 100, and we'll get it done quickly, right? And that's not the game, right? Because that's we're now cutting down on quality, right? I think in really approaching this and saying, well, no, how can we be more efficient and more effective, and how can we really think about this from both sides of the equation, not just the ones who are asking the questions, but those who are answering it too, has had a profound impact on our program, right? And we can document it, right? We've reduced the time it takes to assess a vendor from, we went down measurably. It was about 25% reduction in time to do that, while we doubled the number of vendors that we actually assessed with the same number of staff. So we saw that year over year, and it's continued to do that. So I think where that's a great example of being able to say, okay, how can we change the game, and then use that technology as the enabler to do that.
Yeah, AI is an incredible force multiplier, especially for teams that either short on staff or just need to accomplish more with what they have. So it's cool to see that, Mark, you're able to get such value out of these AI and security. Would love to hear also, segueing from there, what are some of the key ethical considerations that arise when developing and deploying AI systems? So I guess, Mark, in your case, as you evaluate security tools that have AI, as you evaluate tools on behalf of the company using them, what are you thinking through? What are the key ethical considerations you have to go through?
Yeah, so I think for the first part, the considerations that we have to have internally are really no different than our existing policies today. So we have policies today that the kind of acceptable use of technology, acceptable use of data, right? Don't do anything with technology that is illegal, that is criminal activity, right? You can't use your corporate laptop today to go and hack somebody, right? You can't do things like that. And when we first started thinking about this, I was like, wow, we've really got to go and kind of get crazy with what these policies and guidelines are going to be for AI, because it's so different. But when we really boiled it down, it kind of really followed the same path that we have with our existing documentation, where it's just like, listen, don't do illegal things, don't break the law, and be reasonable when you're using this technology. I think that there's a lot of news out there that talks about some of the kind of edge cases, and there's always these crazy edge cases, right? How can you take over the world, and help me rob a bank, and help me build a bomb, and all of these different things. And you could do that with the internet, right? So it's not like AI is doing anything drastically different here, right? You're still going to have those edge cases. From a vendor perspective, I think that we have added a couple of questions to our vendor risk, to the inherent risk assessment, essentially, right? Just to understand, okay, are they using AI? Are they using our data in AI. I also want to understand the value of the vendor, right? Because historically they were providing me with a service. Can I now do the same thing with AI? Are they literally just using AI? There's no secret sauce anymore, right? I can do that myself. And do I need to think about, what the functionality and capability is of that service that I was paying for, that I thought was some, miracle solution that they were providing, but now I can actually do it myself. So those are the ways that we've been thinking about, that inside our organization.
Thanks, Paul. Passing it over the question to you. Ethical considerations you're thinking through at Viso, building with AI. What comes to mind?
Yeah, I think, Mark, I think your comments there about kind of more of the same, right? And the same kind of frameworks, the same concerns that we always had, but applied to this new technology is absolutely spot on. I think there's also an important awareness component, as you have users starting to use AI more frequently, as you have business owners and buyers. Mark mentioned the inherent risk analysis. As you have business owners and buyers buying technologies with AI, there's things that they're going to have to think about that have nuances with AI that they didn't think about before, right? Like there's concerns about whether the AI is going to be getting you to use somebody else's IP, or whether there's going to be bias, or whether there's going to be your users are going to be relying on information in a way that isn't as buyer beware as it should be, like perhaps when there could be hallucination or something like that, right? We've seen companies, for instance, Viso has an offering that we call AI Q&A. That's a fairly new offering that allows companies to easily automate their trust activities. I talked about building those repositories and asking questions, automatically answering trust questions, right? We're able to do that with a degree of accuracy that you don't have to check those over, right? We're high into the, deep into the high 90s in terms of percentages of accuracy, right? Now, that's only because we've taken an approach that is highly concerned about trust, right? We use anchored responses, and we use vector-based search, right? This is different than, let's say, if you just gave all of your policies and standards to ChatGPT and then asked it questions. Well, if you did that, which some vendors have tried, right, you're going to get hallucinations back. It's going to get what it would expect a company to have in terms of your security controls in place, right? So you need to take these things into account. Your users need to understand the architecture and the limitations. And to Mark's point, when you're assessing vendors, you need to take into account frameworks like the AI RMF from NIST 100-1, or the OWASP LLM top 10 for LLMs or for AI, right? For ML. These things are fantastic resources which our platform incorporates to help you and your business owners evaluate third parties. So trust is important. A customer of ours, Cruise Automation, which is in the self-driving car world. Obviously, they use tons of AI, but their concern is safety, right? They need to make sure people's lives are protected, right? And obviously, they take appropriate steps to do that. They know when to involve humans. They know which things to fully automate and which things not to, right? And so you do need to take those steps and understand your technologies. But like Mark said, a lot of it is still the same integrity, the same leakage, the same injection, the same malicious use scenarios that you were with any of the innovative technologies that you've worked with in the past.
So Paul, are you
Kelly.
seeing amongst your customer base people adding in more questions or evaluating more for AI? And in those cases, I'd be curious, are people going as deep as saying, what are you using under the hood? Is it GPT-4? Is it Bard or Cohere or one of the vendors? Kind of curious if you have any insight around how people are evaluating any vendors that include AI in them.
Yeah, that's a great question. Folks are definitely concerned about where their data is going. And one of the things that's so powerful about our platform is the fact that it gives you not only intelligence about your third parties, but also your fourth and nth party relationships, right? And so yes, absolutely. Folks want to know if their data is going to ChatGPT. They want to know if it's going there with the proper protections, the proper accounts, the if applicable, the right sort of anonymization if necessary, for instance, for certain types of data. And these are the types of insights that our platform's able to give them. The fact is that companies are needing to leverage these technologies to stay competitive as quickly as possible. And that means going to vendors, that means working with early stage companies, and that means you need to vet for security, you need to vet for privacy, you need to vet for resilience, you need to vet for trust in AI, right? And that is exactly what our platform is focused on doing.
Right.
Yeah, and I think, Paul, just to add to the comment earlier, and this adds to, Brian asked the question here in the chat around, privacy risk, and I think there's an element here. You're giving people the new technology, and there's a lot of capability and valid hype in the marketplace about it. So instead of just providing them with this new tool, I think there has to be an element of training and guidance that's provided around it, right? Like, okay, listen, it's not all truth and gospel. There are hallucinations, right? It may give you information that's not correct, or depending on what version you're using, it might be only relevant for data up until November 2022, for example, and all of these different elements that are there. And I think that we just need to make sure that people are aware of what they're doing, right? I think that we need to just reset and say, listen, this isn't, there's a lot of there's great progression that's been made here, but we need to kind of sprinkle in a sense of reality and perspective, and the privacy implications. It's like, well, don't put information that you don't want to be potentially public into ChatGPT, right, or any other large language model, right? It's the same as posting something on social, right? You don't post something on Facebook that you want to remain private. And I think that people just need to get the same sort of mindset around this. Like, view a prompt as a search in a toolbar, right, for a browser, right? View it in the same sort of light. I think we just need to make sure that people are framing this in the right way when they're going out there and using it.
Right. Actually, great segue. So on the topic of privacy, how do you balance, not being that department of no, but actually enabling this AI innovation internally? You bring up some great points around user education. Are there any other types of guardrails or initiatives that you take to just say, like, we as an organization, yes, we can use these technologies, but this is how we're going to do it?
Yeah, and for me, I think the challenging piece to this is, this is an area of kind of technology that is not solely a CISO problem, right? Not solely a CISO issue to go and solve and give the green light or be the kind of no police as you referenced it, right? I think that to do this in the most effective way, you have to bring all the stakeholders to the table to have the right conversations. You need to bring the business to the table to understand what their goals are, right, around this. You need to bring compliance to the table with regards to, what compliance mandates do you need to meet based on the industry in which you're operating. You certainly need to bring legal to the table, right, with regards to, any legal implications, and then HR as well from a privacy and a human resources perspective. So that's what we did, right? Is we brought those stakeholders to the table with IT and with the data science team who are certainly leading a lot of these initiatives. And everyone has to be able to kind of put their point of view forward and be able to kind of have the right context around it. We also work with a lot of outside organizations and spoke to peers and different organizations around what they're doing. There was some organizations who took a pretty bold, quick stance, which was, we're going to block it, right? We won't allow it. And for me personally, I think you're actually increasing your risk, right? Because now people are just going to say, well, I'm going to go over here to this personal machine. And now you've got corporate data on a personal machine. You can't see it. You can't do things with it. So we've taken the approach to certainly more of a kind of policy guidance and training angle in steering people the right way, letting them know about all the benefits, letting them know about some of the implications and some of the challenges that come with it, and then we monitor it. So we're able to get some very, very good visibility through our proxy. So we're able to kind of steer people. So if they're going to certain AI sites, we warn them and say, hey, listen, this is an AI site. Did you realize that this is where we're wanting to head you and want to lead you? They can still go there, right? And they can still go to the site that they want to go to, but we've warned them, we've given the information, we've given them our policies and our procedures, and making sure that they're aware. So that's kind of how we're approaching some of those challenges.
Paul, on your end, what are you seeing from either your customers or even internally at Viso? How do you balance the practical and privacy concerns of using AI?
Yeah, Mark gave a great answer there. And I think rather than echo, I'll just focus on, what I can add and what I'm seeing across our customers, right? I think the most important thing is knowing where your data is going, right? That means having an inventory of your vendors and making sure that privacy is a concern, a top level concern during your assessment process, right? And that your assessment process is highly aware of the data that's in scope, right? So I know extending a little bit the question from privacy to confidentiality, obviously when using AI tools, intellectual property is a concern. When from going back strictly to privacy, of course, anytime sharing personal information, right, is a concern. You need to know where it's going. You need to know where you got it to see what regulations it's under, and you need to know how it's going to be handled downstream in order to make sure that you continue to comply with regulations and do business ethically. And that takes having a program that is efficient and effective enough for you to be able to focus on those details, right? And to be able to do the types of coordination within your company and awareness within your company that Mark was talking about, which is really so powerful. And so we're seeing a lot of focus there. We actually released our privacy module. It came out of beta to GA just a few weeks ago. And so something we're very excited about, and our customers are very, very excited about, that gives that level of awareness that's needed to make sure to do this right and continue in an ethical behavior sort of way. Thank you, Kelly.
Definitely. Mark, actually, I had a quick question for you. As a CISO, amongst other CISO peers here in the audience, how do you keep up to speed, up to date on the latest innovations in AI? What are the best resources for you to learn, to understand? You had mentioned, talking with other CISO peers at similar organizations, but are there any other types of resources that you would recommend?
Yeah, I think it's just the kind of threat and technology landscape in general that we have to keep up on. I think that it's just I start my morning every day and just hitting various news sites of various various blogs and websites and reading a lot to keep up to date. Slack is there's some great groups on Slack that people should be familiar with. And as I said at the outset of this call, here at Bain Capital, I'm very, very fortunate to be surrounded by some of the greatest minds on kind of technology investing who are leaning really, really forward and far into some of these emerging technologies and entrepreneurs, and I get the benefit of being exposed to that and kind of spending time with these entrepreneurs who are talking about problems that I haven't even thought of yet, and they're asking me for what do I think about those problems, and they're already solving them, right? And I didn't even realize it's a problem yet. So that's a great benefit of being here at Bain Capital.
Yeah, there's nothing quite like peer learning. That's why I love when Viso puts these on monthly. The type of audience they get, the questions that are shared, always a great way to learn. And actually, with that, we have some poll questions that we've been utilizing as a good way to just prompt the audience and get a bit of I'll take my screen down. We'll just use the poll that's on the through Zoom. But basically, have you started using AI solutions in your cybersecurity third-party risk programs? Would love to hear from the audience where things are going on their end. But with that, we can keep right along with the next question, which is, as AI continues to evolve, which it does every day. I mean, you go on Twitter, there's some new, improvement. What areas or aspects of cybersecurity do you foresee benefiting the most from AI in the future? And I guess we'll start with Paul, and then we'll move to Mark.
Yeah, you know, I'm
Paul, you can't say vendor and third-party risk. No.
Yeah, you
I
can,
know,
yeah.
I know. I'm doing my best to like add at the last right there, you know, but you know, Kelly, I think that there is tremendous opportunity, right? I think that you know, there's a lot of things that you know, that I built when I was a CISO that with the technology that's available today, I'm just, you know, just drooling, thinking, wow, you could do this with that, you could do that with this, right? Whether it is automatically categorizing the criticality with regard to my environment, with regard to vulnerabilities that have been detected. I think there's a ton of opportunity there to automate the essentially AI decisioning and risk determination based on deep contextual information there. I think there is lots of opportunity in SOAR and SIM and in incident response and detection in a similar way, pulling, you know, powerful contextual information to put things in perspective for you in a way that you know, maybe only your best engineers or several of your best engineers in a room together could have done prior, right? So there's tremendous opportunity there. Really everything with regard to GRC, I'm gonna again try not to make this all about Viso. But there's a lot of language, a lot of information within all sorts of GRC workflows. And today, those are complicated, time consuming, really, really difficult to manage, right? They require, you know, complex tools, workflows that take, you know, weeks to months to set up, and then your process changes and you're, you know, back to square one, right? With what you can do with large language models today and the types of things we've done with TPRM can be done really across all sorts of GRC workflows, eliminating those workflows similar to what we've done with TPRM. So there's lots of power, really. You know, nobody has an excuse today for not having, you know, a great set of security policies and standards. You can generate those in a heartbeat, right? So there's just a ton of opportunity, Kelly, and there's just more every day.
Yeah, Mark, what are you the
Super
most
exciting
excited
time to be
about?
in security.
Yeah, you know, I think the place where AI is going to have the biggest impact is on the challenge today of context, right? And where we have contextual problems within security. So I think that can be around policy enforcement in a number of areas, right? DLP could be one, for example, right? Where, you know, DLP hasn't traditionally worked outside of an organization that, you know, has a 16-digit number, which is their crown jewels, right? Every time you see a 16-digit number, you need to block it, right? That's where DLP will work. It doesn't need any context, right? It's just binary. Like you see it, you stop it. Like that's easy. But I think, you know, where DLP doesn't work and you create friction for an organization and you're getting screamed at by the business is where it's like, well, I need to access it now, but not from this machine, not during that time, or this user needs access to this. Well, it was secure data, but now it's publicly known information, so you can do that. Like that's the area where you can just pump in so much data into an LLM to provide that context, right? To provide that context to allow you to have a more kind of verbose policy set, something that's just wide open, and have it be operational and not create too much friction. I think the other area is really where you're going to be assimilating vast amounts of data and being asked to make decisions, right? And I think that is really in the SOC, right? So in a security operations center, I think you've got organizations today who are trying to be, you know, it's these SOAR platforms, right? The orchestration and response, and all they're doing is really a set of processes or gathering information and bringing things together to allow an analyst to be more effective. But I think what you're going to see with generative AI is some of those decisions that the analyst had to make that were made easier through a SOAR platform could now be made by AI itself, So the decision is now made. So almost take away, your tier 1, your tier 2 type analyst decisions and move those forward. I think people are going to get more confident in that, right? I certainly wasn't confident and ready to hand over the keys to my operations center to a SOAR platform, but it's only as good as what you tell it. But I think, again, coming back to that contextual piece, if you have an AI platform that understands that context, you can start to be more confident in the decisions that it will make on some tier 1 and tier 2 type SOC operation responses.
Got it. And I know that the question was posed in the sense of, what are you the most excited about, I guess, in the future? But even today, whether it be DLP or in the SOC, are you seeing AI make any realistic, major changes? I guess, concretely, what are some, use cases internally where you've actually been seeing quite substantial results?
Yeah, well, I think you can maybe look back and Paul brought up that at Viso they've been the patents were filed in 2017. This is not like a new thing. This is a thing, right? And I think historically people may have been kind of using large language models, but it was called machine learning versus being called artificial intelligence, right? Now I just think that it's been kind of unleashed to the general public. So everyone is an armchair data scientist at this point, right? And it's like, well, I use AI, right? So using AI, right? But we've had that before with a number of different solutions where essentially they're using large data sets and using relationships between data to make decisions, right? On anomaly detection, for example, right? And I think there's some email providers out there, right, who look at, hang on, Mark usually sends emails to these 3 people. He's now sending an email to a 4th person. That's strange, right? Let's flag that. Or some type of insider threat platforms, right? Where they're looking at, hang on, what Mark is doing today at 9 o'clock is different from what he usually does at 9 o'clock, right? And all they're essentially doing is looking at large data sets and trying to categorize relationships between that data. So it's nothing new. I think for me, this is where vendors will start to potentially differentiate themselves more quickly than others, right? Because I think there's been a lot of me too in the industry where capabilities and functionality start to kind of overlap. But I think now what you're going to have is, vendors who truly get AI, right? They're going to kind of hockey stick away from their competition more rapidly because of the capabilities they can bring if they're not going to harness that and bring that to the table. So I think in conversations I'm having with my vendors and understanding what their roadmaps look like, that's a key question for me. Is like, well, what are you doing? Where are you going? Right? Because that's what I want them to bring the AI to my program indirectly than me having to go out and grab a data science team and think about how I'm going to solve this. No. Like I'm putting that back on the vendor to solve the problems that I'm asking them to solve in a more effective way with AI.
Absolutely. Paul, over to you. Same question, I guess, from a reality standpoint, what are some of those critical workflows, processes within the security field that you're seeing some true change?
Yeah, I think obviously for us as an AI company, we use AI really anywhere we can, right? So we're very focused on automating whatever we can in any of our pipelines, whether it be events or software development related, and always seeing movement and headway with new tools. I think Mark touched on the most important areas from my CISO mindset, right? Obviously, any of these things that deal with scale and context. Of course, for us and our customers, we're focused on watching publicly available information, consuming information about third parties, and giving them alerts with regard to breaches and high-profile security incidents that may impact their third, fourth, and party relationships, right? And using AI to be able to do that with things like named entity recognition, focused on any source, public sources, API sources, files, artifacts, what have you, right? And so I think it's just tremendous what the possibilities are, and I'm really excited by the future. you know, when we were first doing this, you know, CISOs are highly skeptical, right? They're skeptical of AI. We've all used AI touting tools in the past, specifically in the early days of those in, let's say, the security events management space, where you get thousands of alerts at 50% confidence and you need a team to kind of sift through those because the AI isn't all that great. But we were dedicated to making a different product, and today, you know, we're in use by some of the biggest companies in the world. So it's really, really, you know, a powerful transformation that frees up your expert resources to focus their time where it's most important and can have the most traction with regard to reducing risk. And you know, I think that's what we're all after as CISOs and technologists, right? How can we focus humans where they could provide the most benefit, right? And so there's just a ton of possibility, Kelly. I know there's going to be
Yeah.
lots of activity for you folks in the investment world.
Yeah, well, so we have, I know we said we're going to do questions at the end during Q&A, but there's a great question here from Brian around, you know, how can you differentiate vendors who say they are using AI versus those that are truly leveraging, i.e. marketing versus reality? Well, I mean, happy to ask Mark this first, but the other bigger question is like, what are things that you're just generally still skeptical about in AI today? A lot of great things happening, but what are you still skeptical about? So yeah, Mark, if you'd be comfortable answering that question.
Oh, there's always the there's always the what do we call vendor bingo, right? on the initial sales call, and you know, typically it's between, you know, 4 to 7 minutes where they will at least have thrown AI out once, or if not twice, right? And as I said, it's been the evolution of, you know, machine learning, and using large data sets. You know, I'm not a data scientist myself, right? But I think that there's some different types of AI, right? There's generative AI when it's generating new information, or there's discriminative AI where it's just picking between, like, is this a picture of a dog, yes or no, right? It can tell you what things are. So, you know, I don't want to get over my skis technically and going down a rabbit hole of you know, a data science lecture, but I think that, you know, listen, you know, you do your due diligence with vendors in a POC, right? You have your understanding and your capability goals that you want for that project, for that vendor. You truly want to partner with them and build trust. And if you're skeptical in kind of the FUD and the information that's being given to you on initial sales calls, to me that's an initial red flag where I'm like, well, do I trust this organization, or are they, you know, is it not going to work? So, you know, less about me, you know, getting the code and reverse engineering what they're giving to me. It's more about, do I really trust that organization and put it through its paces in a POC, and does it deliver? So that's the way that I kind of boil it.
Yeah, results will show whether it's real or not.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So we have one more poll question just around, you know, what are your top priorities when it comes to deploying AI in your organization? This is for the crowd, so if you wouldn't mind answering and sharing a bit with us in the audience, like how everybody else is thinking. But we're actually coming down on time. So the last question that I had for you guys is, can you share any practical strategies or tactics for organizations that are looking to start integrating AI into their security flows and risk management processes? So I guess, Mark, if you wouldn't mind starting, just telling us a little bit, telling the audience, like, all right, getting started, here are things you should keep in mind, here are things that you should do, and here's how to get started.
I think again, I will always lead with effective CISOs do more work in front of the keyboard than behind it, right? So if I'm a CISO within an organization, how am I going to recommend or kind of advise a CISO to go and start to tackle something like AI within the organization? So first of all, I'd go and have conversations, right? And get a level of understanding of desire to use it, understanding of what it is, and within that understand the potential benefits and potential pitfalls of it, and understand, okay, where do I have to educate, and how do I have to kind of put my thumb on the scales to kind of bring people along on where the thought process and the mindset is around this new technology. I think second is, as I said earlier, is this is not just a CISO problem, right? This is not something that you're going to solve on your own. To do it effectively and to make sure that you're, not creating enemies within the organization or not kind of adding, unnecessary operational friction. You have to go and partner with organizations, right? And I think within our organization, it was really truly a partnership, and potentially it was led by myself and our legal team, right? But hot on the heels were the data science team who were going to use it, the businesses who wanted to use it, and the compliance team, right? And those are the folks that need to come to the table. So that's almost the outset of where I would have people start. But the other one is also to think about, listen, you can reduce a lot of the risks associated with AI by going down the path of a licensed model with one of the providers, right? Because now all of the issues that people think about with the privacy concerns of where's my data going and is someone else's model going to be trained on my data, all of those elements go away because you can dictate a lot of the terms and a lot of the policies with the provider that you're going to select to be your partner. And as I think about that now, it just becomes another data silo within my own program. So I've got my file storage, my cloud file storage, okay, where all of my data is going. I've now got a LLM, which is where more data is going, right? And training a data set, right? Which is my own, and it's encapsulated, and I can control what goes in, and I can ensure that it is my own environment and it's not being used by and leveraged by anybody else. So those are the ways that I would advise people to start thinking about this.
Thanks, Mark. Paul, any words here?
Yeah, so to piggyback on what Mark said there, I think you need to think about picking a great partner in terms of tackling the particular problem that you're trying to tackle with AI. So you need to pick a partner that has the right understanding of the problem that you're trying to focus on, that understands your space, that understands all the contextual information that will allow them to not only have a great AI solution, but have a great business solution, right? The second advice I have for you is, as your organization goes to look for various AI-based technologies, is for you to be a great partner. What that means is for you and your third-party cyber risk management to be an efficient, fast, informative partner that is going to help them to make good decisions very, very quickly early in the procurement cycle that help the risk of your organization, right? So that's going to take being efficient, being automated, right? And then lastly, I would say for those of you that are in the trust space, that are essentially responding on behalf of your security team or your company to perhaps your partners or potential customers, to be a great partner. That means provide them, take advantage of technology and AI to be able to provide them with fast, accurate, trustworthy information that they need to make good risk decisions about doing business with you. And so that's my advice, Kelly.
Thank you, Paul. So with that, that's the end of my questions. I'm actually going to pass it over to Aileen, who's going to go through some of the Q&A that came through over chat. So Aileen, over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. And thank you, Mark and Paul. So we did get a few questions in the chat. Hopefully we have time to get through all of them, but I'm going to start with a question from Andrea, looking to understand how to make automated and informed decisions on third-party security risk the third-party security risk management program I run. And Paul, you may be the best one to answer this, but Mark and Kelly also feel free to chime in.
Yeah, so that's a great question, of course, and it kind of, I think it goes back to what we were talking about before in terms of picking a great partner in this space. Of course, VisoTrust is a potential candidate for that, but I think taking a step back, not thinking about products, being agnostic here, the opportunities for you really start with interacting with your business owners and streamlining the process of collecting information from them building that, what can be simple process in such a way that allows them and you to quickly ascertain inherent risk from really the early part of the interaction with them. That is going to be key to you having both a quality program that focuses on what's important and can manage risk, but also allow you to be efficient, to focus on what's most important. I think the next thing, the next piece of advice I have for you is to do useful, meaningful assessments rather than relying on questionnaires or ratings, which are very, very haphazard with regard to the quality of information. Instead, focus your team and your limited resources on artifact-based assessment. That essentially means collecting artifacts of the security program that already exists from your third parties, which is actually a lot faster and a lot easier than collecting questionnaires, and also provides much higher quality information. That is actually a transformative opportunity, and certainly one, you know, that you can apply AI and various AI-based tools to. Now, of course, that would need help from engineering or help from a partner, right? To do. Most likely, most TPRM teams, you know, don't have AI engineers at their disposal. But those are, I think, the 2 points that that I would emphasize as being most practical in terms of bringing AI to your program in a way that is transformative and allows you to get the most signal and the least noise possible while benefiting your business in the greatest possible way. Great question.
Yeah, and just to add to that, if I may, Paul, I think the focus,
Please.
first has to be on your own process, because as we've spoken about throughout this webinar, is that AI is a great productivity tool and can bring lots of data together and make things happen faster. Right? I don't think that you can expect a poor process to be improved with AI. Right? You have to have the foundational elements in place. So everything Paul said, understanding what the inherent risks are, asking the business how the vendor is going to be used, what's the blast radius associated with that vendor, what, you know, and then understanding, okay, what are we going to do with the results of our risk assessment, right? And how do we use that information to move the needle from a risk perspective with that vendor, right? Do we need to put, you know, legal language into the contract? Do we need to put compensating controls on our side? Are we going to make a decision to kind of recommend that maybe that vendor has to do certain things before we're going to engage with them, right? Those are the two sides, the two ends of the spectrum that you need to work on. The middle, which is the processing of information and getting the assessment done, that's where AI can really, really help. And, you know, everything that Paul and the team at BISO do is exactly that, is help that middle bit, you know, shrink that time so you're able to spend more time being more effective with managing that risk associated with your third parties.
Incredible answers. Thank you both. The next question is from Brian. And Brian, thank you so much for your engagement in the webinar. We've loved your questions that have come in. Has anyone implemented an internal certification concept for using AI tools? Basically ensuring people are adequately trained and the company has appropriate visibility into AI use cases.
I think my answer to that, Brian, will be nearly, right? So we're kind of there, right? And we haven't trained people on how to use AI tools, but we're certainly going to add the AI guidelines, into our annual kind of certification that every employee has to do, right? You've signed off on understanding what the information security program is. You've signed off on understanding what the compliance policies are, with all of those different mandates. And now, you know, as part of that, you're just going to also have signed off on understanding what the AI guidelines and policies are. Certainly, there's no training there. Where we're trying to kind of, I would guess, coach people, right, which is like information in real time, is again what we're doing with our proxy. So when, you know, we can detect within the proxy when people are using a browser and go into a certain, you know, AI site, we can kind of steer them back with a warning message. And that's a way that we're doing it. And they have to click accept to say, okay, I understand that you told me that. So I guess that's the validation that we have. But again, specific training, we haven't been able to roll that out quite yet.
Jumping in, I think across our customer base, I think, where Mark and team are is pretty consistent across our customers. Companies definitely want to be able to provide that certification. Some are further along than others. And that demand has really been, what prompted us to create the AI Trust module that we've just recently released on the platform, which essentially allows companies to do that. Now it's going to take them a little time with that new module to get through the populations of vendors that they're looking at. They're going to be continually looking at new AI vendors, right? But the purpose is really to enable companies to do just that. So it's a great question, Brian, and definitely something that with this new module, I think we're going to see lots of companies implementing that certification process over the next couple of months here.
Thank you both. Kelly, anything you wanted to add, or did we cover it?
The only thing I would add there is just being based in New York, talking to a lot of the Fortune 1000 that are here. I mean, everybody's early in this journey. Again, as I mentioned before, every day there's some new innovation in the space. I mean, even in the past year, ChatGPT is what blew this, lit off this AI revolution. So everybody's early here, and there's so much to learn from talking with other folks. So again, these conversations like this have always been so helpful to hear how other folks are doing it. But if it's any consolation, for what it's worth, everybody seems to be on the same boat of just figuring it out right now.
Thank you. And we have time for one last question. How do you get leadership on board to start deploying AI throughout your organization when they are not for it? And while the panel answers that, I'm just going to pull up our last slide, which is just a way to connect with our panelists today if you want to continue the discussion post-webinar. But I'll hand it off to the panel to answer that question.
Yeah, I think that, sometimes it's a lot about education, right? And realization around what those benefits are. So I think, it took us 10 minutes before our most senior leaders were like, oh my word, this is amazing. Like, look at this. You just have to kind of show them, right? Okay, look what this can do. Boom, boom, boom. And you just show it to them, pull up a browser, throw it on the screen, and they're blown away by the capabilities. So I think, if that would be the best way, the proof is in the pudding, as they say.
Yeah, I can't imagine the leadership at Bain needing much convincing. I feel like they got their finger on the pulse of innovation. What were you going to say something there, Kelly?
I was just going to add that Mark has said this a couple of times today, but securing AI is not just the job of the CISO and his team. It's a job for everybody. So the best strategies that I've seen work within the ecosystem is the CISO working with the chief data officer, working with legal, working with everybody across the business so that everybody's on the same page. And Paulie, I'll pass it on to you to cap us off.
Yeah, I think that the opportunities are tremendous. As Mark was saying, if you feel like your leadership don't quite understand what AI can do and what it can offer, and especially recent developments in generative AI and large language models, then you need to get in front of them, and you might need to get some of the partners you're working with in front of them. I think the proof is in the pudding. If you have folks show you stuff live and show you what it can do, that not only proves your vendors and what they do, but also will be the proof that your executives need. And it's a time where you have to act if you want to remain competitive, right? Some folks in the 90s maybe wanted to stick around to the library and keep looking at microfilm, right? But that's not going to keep you on at the top across your competitive landscape, right? So this is the same sort of thing. It's a paradigm shift. Folks have to learn how to use these tools and how to use them effectively and safely, as you mentioned, Kelly. And now's the time.
Fantastic, and we ended right on time. Thank you again to everyone that tuned in. Like Kelly mentioned, the recording will be sent to everyone. So if you want to share it with your colleagues and your team, go ahead and feel free to do that. And we'll also follow up. This will be an ongoing AI series for Viso Trust. So we have webinars on AI throughout the fall. So we will follow up with the rest of the programming throughout the rest of the year. Thank you again, and I hope everyone has a great day.
Thanks, Aileen. Mark, Paul, thank you so much. Great conversation.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us, everybody.